I see our sport has risk in it all the time. That's one thing we all should admit before we. Thing is how much additional risk to take in competition, and that is what I evaluated, and also my motives for competing, and then in flight executing and or sticking to that principle that I came to, that I will win when I like now. My principle is simple. I will try to win when I can think smart and execute smart. But if I have to win by taking a chance, I don't care. I will let other people go if they want to do that.
Greetings, everybody, from a very cold, wintry Sun Valley. Winter's come early to us here in the Wood River Valley. It's been fun to get outside and play a little bit, but as always, my mind is on paragliding, and the stars kind of aligned on this one. The PWC was out in Beer a few weeks ago, a place that's very special to me. That's where I cracked off some of my first kind of XC flying back in '09, and then again in '11, and terrific place to fly there in the foothills of the Himalayas, and they had a terrific comp. And just about the same time that was going on, I was working on an article for the Outdoor Journal about the X-Alps, and the gentleman I'm dealing with there said, listen, you've got to talk to Gurpreet Dhindsa. He's India's #1 pilot. He's a fantastic guy. He's got some great stories. I think he'd be fantastic on the podcast. So I reached out to him, and it's taken us a few weeks to put it together because internet's been tricky for Gurpreet, and the sound quality here reflects that, although I think it's good enough. You certainly won't struggle through it, but it's not the crispest sound we've had on some of the other shows, but I think it still works. Gurpreet's been flying for 20 years. This is just a terrific account of his history there and his progression, his thoughts on safety, accidents, getting better, overcoming all kinds of political and bureaucratic trouble in India and how hard that's been. He's had to move mountains there. He's the only certified instructor, but there's tons of schools there. There's a lot of really bad teaching going on, so we talk about some of that and just his struggle to make paragliding a legitimate, sport in India. I think he's done a lot of good for the sport there, but it has been really challenging. In terms of strategy and tactics and flying and his own flying, we get into some really cool stuff here about, how important it is to being in the moment and how important it is to change strategies that aren't working for you. For a long time, gaggle flying wasn't really working for him in competitions, and so this time around, or these days, he's gotten a lot more into flying his own line and making sure he's just enjoying it, and not diving into really nasty places just to try to get on the podium. He's decided that that's just not worth it, and so we get into a lot of that, and just how his career has developed and progressed and changed. And I think there's a lot here that you're really going to enjoy. He's a great personality. We had a lot of fun with this one. Without further ado, Gurpreet Dhindsa. Gurpreet, it is fantastic to meet you, even though we're not meeting face-to-face. We're meeting on Skype, but I know you've just gotten done with the PWC out there and in Beer, and we'll get into that. But maybe before we do, you can tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and how you got into flying and when you got into flying.
Gavin, first of all, it's my pleasure and kind of honor also to be on your podcast, and to be considered worthy of it, actually. I started paragliding in '95, and I came into paragliding from actually sailplanes. I flew sailplanes for just a year, just started, and then actually my instructor told me that temperamentally I'm better suited for paragliding, maybe. And he actually pushed me.
You were a little bit too crazy for sailplanes.
No, actually, it was a government-owned club, and they were lazy, or not the instructor, but the general mechanism. The instructor was a good guy, actually. He pushed me in the right way. But the many days you go there, no flying, and I'm kind of a person who always questions, like, why we can't do it today. and Indian system is not very kind with that kind of wires. So that's how I came into paragliding.
And where were you at the time? Where did you learn?
In India only. I learned in a place called Bilaspur. I started learning there. Actually, there was nobody, like no proper instructor. They were self-proclaimed people, like self-proclaimed instructors. And I started with them, but because I came from learning sailplanes, which is but with bit more formal education system, I soon realized that the training was quite inadequate. And I got little injured, like a sprained ankle, and came to conclusion that if I have to make mistakes, I will make my own. So I more or less self-taught after that. I mean, with help of a lot of friends, of course, I met on the way.
And this place you learned, help me out with the geography because I've been to India several times, but I've only flown really around Bir and kind of the foothills of the Himalayas. That were you in the Himalaya or is this another part of India?
Yes,
Okay.
it's foothill of Himalayas. It's from Beed, it's just about 130 kilometers.
Ah, okay, the Dharmasala way or the Mandi way?
From Mandi towards Chandigarh, like from southeast of Mandi.
Okay, okay. And do you remember the first wing that you started on?
No, actually, the one I used for training there, no, but later on I had the Comet XC2,
Okay.
and that was a company called Comet, if you remember,
Yeah,
way
of
back.
course. The- So take me from those early days. In the beginning, was it just little tiny flights off your local hill? And how did you go kind of from there to even discovering cross country? Was cross country flying happening around you with other pilots that were better, or was that kind of the beginning of cross country flying in India?
It was beginning, but there were already pilots. Like Debu was ahead of me. He was much younger, but he had learned 2 years before me, and he was already doing his Dharamshala flights when I first came to be.
Hmm,
But advantage I had was that I was already flying cross country on a sailplane.
sure.
So the concept of cross country was clear to me. Only problem was handling the glider, getting used to the soft wings.
Hmm. And did you do kind of like SIV training and that kind of thing, or was it more just hanging out with guys like Debu and kind of piecing it together?
Yeah, there we were fortunate also, like Bob Drury, Robbie Whittle, and John Sylvester, they were coming to India. We didn't learn much directly, like, but more from observation and talking to them. And there were other cross-country pilots also, Swiss pilots, French pilots. They were also coming here. So that's the reason I moved to Beer. I gave up my work and I moved to Beer because I realized soon that if I want to get better, I have to fly with good pilots, and good pilots were here.
When did you move to Beer?
I actually from '97 I started coming here in the season, and then I think a couple of years down the line, 2002 I started a school here, so I actually moved a little bit before, but for a year I was in UK getting my instructor's education.
Okay. And do they have kind of a similar certification in India like is as in Europe, or how does that process work?
Currently, India has no certification system. Yeah, I'm kind of only certified instructor, and with my students also, I give them a Hungarian license. I registered
Okay.
my school with the Hungarians, and I give them a Hungarian license.
Well, maybe I bet I bet it's still a lot more organized than maybe the Russian system. I remember coming to Beer for my first time in 2009, and I think there were 70 students from Russia and one instructor.
No, now they got divided. Now you get probably four instructors.
they've
But
they've really increased their safety ratio, I guess.
in India, it's kind of mixed lot. We have very organized schools which can qualify almost under any system if it comes. The three or four schools in Pune which are quite responsible. They do things in a very responsible way. I'm doing my best here in Beer. But then on the other hand, we have a lot of self-proclaimed, not even, question isn't self-proclaimed. I mean, they're not ready. They're not instructor level people, but they're teaching.
Right.
And there are even associations, like some local associations, which are promoting that kind of people on basis of regionalism or neopism or something like that. It's not based on qualification.
So you
So
have to
that is
be
the big.
yeah, you have to be careful if you're going to come to learn in India to maybe seek out people like yourself.
Exactly. I mean, I'm surprised actually. Even some foreigners come and they go learn from people like that. And it's not that loss of business that worries me. It's reputation of our country that worries me. And also, I wonder what kind of thinking were they doing when they chose instructor like that.
Well,
And really surprises me.
that's a good warning to our listeners because I know that it's become a really famous place to fly and it attracts people from around the world. You have incredibly good weather at certain times of the year and big mountains, but in some ways very friendly mountains. That's where I learned to do some of my first bigger flights. I did my first bivvy actually in Beer with John Sylvester, a little short flight from Beer back to Manali, and we camped very high, top landed and camped very high, and got encased in ice, and then flew back the next
Wow.
morning. And it was just we flew back over Beer the next morning before the first person had even taken off up at Cloud Base, and everybody was looking up, going, "Where in the hell did these guys come from?" It was a really special, a very special trip, and kind of opened my eyes to what's possible. It's not very far, but it's boy, that's
Yeah.
spectacular. So you were how old then were you in 95? How old were you when you learned?
29.
29. Okay, so you've been flying quite a long time too. And
Uh,
when did you start competing?
2004.
Well, pretty okay. So about 10 years later you started competing, and then was that also just in India or do you compete internationally? Do you travel quite a bit?
I started with the pre-World Cup in India and then jumped straight into a World Championship in Portugal, which I was second last.
That Gurpreet, that sounds like my first super final. I went in there thinking I was hot shit and I got my ass kicked. that's
No,
that's good
I
learning
knew
too.
what's going to happen, but I wanted to have that experience. So
Yeah, sure. And then have you been part of the Indian World's team then since then pretty regularly?
yes, pretty regularly. I've been competing ever since, actually.
Okay. Fantastic. And so what are you flying now and what happened last week in beer? How'd that go?
I'm flying Boomerang now, Boomerang 10. And last week, weather wasn't typical beer weather in autumn, but I think it only made it more challenging. We had some, I was talking to some beginner cross-country pilots here in India, and yesterday only, and they said that the conditions we had set 90-kilometer task, they probably won't even take off. That was the kind of weather we had. But brilliant task. My results are just like mid-level, but I'm quite happy with the flying we did.
Hmm.
Made some mistake, bombed out, but that happens.
And what have you found with most of your time? It sounds like flying in the Himalaya. How has that transferred? How have those skills transferred to other places when you've gone to fly at other world events or in Europe or South America? Tell me a little bit about that. Is it seems like a fantastic training ground.
Yeah, it trains you very well for strong conditions, but when you go fly flatlands, you're totally unprepared. Actually, that's what happened to me in Portugal. It was me and Debu together actually there. And after first day, we were laughing that Debu, we will take off and we will think where the thermals are going to be, and then we won't go there. We will go somewhere else because wherever we think thermals are, they are not there. That was our strategy on day two in Portugal in 2003, actually.
Go where you think you shouldn't the whole time.
Exactly. We exclude the places where we think we should go and then we search somewhere else. That was the strategy.
I love it.
And
I love it.
but thing is, yeah, beer makes you pretty good with strong conditions. You're not, that's not a problem anymore. And with the big mountains, so you're very comfortable with terrain and being close to big mountains. But you're not prepared for flatlands, or definitely not prepared. Like my weakness still is weak conditions with windy day. I'm stumped. Whenever I face that condition, I go from very good ranking, like top 10 to last 10.
Ah, okay. So you have trouble tracking the thermals when they're light and it's windy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And when it's like a drifty and very weak and it's windy, also you're fighting headwind. I don't have patience because I'm so used to strong conditions. I can't stick around and try 10 times with the same trigger point or something. Drifting and coming back, drifting and coming. I just give up, or I start searching somewhere else, and then I bomb out. So that's I know my weakness, but it's so much ingrained into your muscle memory. It's hard sometimes to change suddenly.
Yeah, I just was working on the last podcast with Josh Cohn, who I'm sure you've flown with over the years. But it's amazing. I think what he brought out was how important the psychological, to just fly confidently, how important that is. And it really is about training, not just the technique, but knowing you can do it, isn't it? That's important.
That's very important. Actually, in 2009, I was flying pretty good, and but I was never actually doing very good in results. And I was encouraged by one of the Bulgarian pilots saying that, Gurpreet, you can win, you don't try to win ever. And I won the next three competitions I did after that.
Wow.
Just because somebody told me I'm good enough, it made a lot of difference. Because see, in India, we didn't have any mentor, we didn't have any coach, we had nobody ahead of us to teach. And we always, and because we started way behind the European pilots, we had this kind of thing that we are not good enough, we are not good enough. And then it took somebody to kind of encourage us and say, like, you can do it. So that made a lot of difference.
Is your job then purely out from paragliding? Is that your kind of year round income is from instruction and that kind of thing and competitions, or do you have something on the side, or is paragliding just a side?
No, my income comes from teaching paragliding.
Do you get any help from the government?
Not at all.
No. Okay.
In fact, I told this in media before, so I can say it again now, is that best I expect from government is to leave me alone. Because usually, instead of help, we had problems from government.
Ah, okay, okay. So wow, it sounds tricky then. I mean, you've got some certainly visiting pilots come out there that are terrific. I know people make the migration every year to Beer in the spring and the fall, but it sounds like training can be quite challenging if you don't have. I always think of myself. I feel so lucky that I have mentors around me that have been competing for a long time, but can also tell me when I'm being stupid, and like you say, giving you the kind of hand on the back to make you feel better. But that sounds like it might be tricky there.
Yeah, like right now I'm at a level where I have good results in category 2 comps or opens, but I never had a good result in, like, best was 17th position, I think, in a World Cup. Uh, but I think from here onwards, it's more, if not a mentor, we need a good team that we can fly together and encourage, and also to believe that we can do it. I just about started feeling that I can stay with the lead gaggle in the World Cup, and it took me 20 years to get here. And without, that's what happens without the mentor. If we had a coach, a mentor, a team, and some sponsorships or encouragement from the government, it could have happened in, let's say, 6, 7 years. So it
Tell
took us
me,
three.
that's interesting. Then tell me about that kind of transition from maybe feeling like you could do well in Cat 2 to Cat 1. Was that just purely mental, or was that maybe just an accumulation of more and more hours, some combination?
Both, I think. Most of it is hours and World Cup hours. More you compete in the World Cup, and equipment also. Like I was flying X's when the two-liner thing came in, and I stayed with X's because they had been giving me wing for a couple of years. 2008, 9, 10, they gave me wings. So I stayed loyal to the company, but lagging behind, and was difficult here. And then I jumped to New York. I had good performance for a year, but then my body weight increased and I gained a weight. I became a little fat. And I struggled with, again, like I couldn't get the last 100 meters that other pilots were getting most of the time, particularly in weak conditions. And then now jumped to boomerang, a size bigger, and again I had very good, like beginning, first task I won the task this summer. So it was, and it seemed super easy. One, it was in Macedonia. I'm very familiar with the place, but I think it was equipment also. So it's combination of everything. And the years I struggle also contribute, because when you struggle with slightly handicap in equipment or something, then you're trying to make up with observation, with skills, with strategy, and then when you jump to right equipment, it immediately shows.
Suffering makes us better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've been mostly talking about competitions, but are you also it sounds like you're quite passionate about competitions. Are you also passionate about just free flight?
I am, but I have to make my earning from teaching paragliding. So actually, nowadays I do fly less in beat than most visiting pilot do, because same, it's time for me to earn money. If I don't earn money, then I don't have money to buy equipment and compete.
Hmm.
So I enjoy competition. I have, like, after Eddie got hurt and our friend Dalip Kotecha, he died in same year in Bulgaria. I had a lot of thinking to do, and came to conclusion that I still enjoy competing. I will compete, but maybe for slightly different reasons, and like take slightly less chances, but I will compete. So that's a chosen path after a lot of thought.
Yeah. Have you been hurt yourself? You mentioned you had a small injury right when you were first learning, but have you had any other accidents?
I had an accident in 2000, broke my shoulder. That made me think enough to go to UK and do my certifications, including instructor certification.
Okay. And have you ever had a period? This is a common question I ask everybody, but have you ever had a period where you've had to back away from the sport, or maybe had to contemplate it more, or been scared away from the sport for a while?
Not scared in a way, but like when Eddie, first Dilip died in the competition, I kind of became more stubborn in that competition. I decided to continue with the competition, and I came in third in that. It was a pre-worlds in Bulgaria. And just a week later, Eddie had an accident. He was in coma, and in the next competition in Macedonia, I was 92nd. So I and there were a couple of tasks in which I looked, the waypoint seemed to be in the lee side of the mountain. I just refused to go. I just landed, and so back away a bit, yes, a little scared, yes, and it took me almost 2 years to regain the full form, but I didn't stop competing.
Hmm. So you were still fine with flying, but you definitely were taking less risk.
Yeah, I would. A lot of times I decided to land and not continue with the task.
Hmm. And it's interesting, isn't it? Whether a competition or whether we're free flying, when we don't fly aggressively, it's hard to do well.
Yeah, it's not question of aggression even. I think it's a balance. You have to be in the moment, and if there is something serious going on in your brain, you're not in the moment. So what seems to be dangerous at that time may be not dangerous when you're flying with the flow. You're in the moment, then it's easier to handle.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a great way to put that. Um, what are your goals now? You've been flying since '95, so 20 years. Is it still to get better and better at competitions? Are you still quite? Do you still find you're very excited about the sport now after all these years?
Given my strategy this year has been that I would not fly competitions for scores. I don't care about, but I like to win each. I fly so I can win a task.
Hmm.
So I take chances. I I stay with the lead as much as possible. If I get a lead, I attack, and even if I bomb out, I don't care. So this is a deliberately chosen strategy, so I can learn how to stay in the lead if I ever get it, and also to be more attack, not aggressive, but like when opportunity or my skills let me lead, I should not be uncomfortable leading. That is the strategy. And also, it's kind of a challenge. I want to fly my own line. So, if what better way to be in the lead and choose the line? So far, because I don't have that good a reputation, particularly with the World Cup level pilots, the gaggles don't usually follow me. But it's okay. Sooner or later, if I keep choosing right lines, people will come with me. And
Yeah,
I
I mean
think
that.
I'm choosing right lines in last few competitions. Even if my results were not so good, my lines were much better than even what the most of the winning gaggle chose. Just that I was flying alone most of the time. So I'm proud of that, and I'm working on that. And sooner or later it will work out.
Well,
Idea is small improvements and continuous improvement, and to enjoy it. If I stop enjoying it, I'll stop doing it.
this change in your strategy, was this recommended to you, or was it something that you just felt like, okay, maybe I've gotten as good as I can using this what I've always done, and I need to do something new.
It's my own thought. I think mainly it's like I don't need to fly for points because in India Debu stopped competing, so I don't have much competition for national ranking. So there's no need to bother about points or anything. I better to get better and to enjoy flying. And if I feel more satisfied if I make a choice and I have a good choice, even if my ranking is not good, I feel more satisfied at the end of the day. So that is much better feeling than just few more points.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that.
So
And what initially, you're going to rewind the clock here again. What initially got you excited about, or why did you want to take up sailplanes?
I got no idea. I think every kid, particularly boys, as a kid, we all dream of flying, and I think some kids don't give up their dreams. That's.
Hmm.
And my father was in army and in the border police also later on, and I saw his life, and I didn't want to go into services, but I wanted to fly. When I was growing up, commercial airline business in India hadn't opened up that way. Thankfully, I didn't go into that. I just wanted to fly as a hobby. So gliding was the cheapest option, and that's how I got into it.
Hmm. And then when you transitioned to paragliding, was it kind of an instant, oh my God, this is amazing, or did it take some time?
Yeah, it was like coming home. I
Oh,
had my first flight on paraglider, and I knew this was it.
wow. I like that. We're always
Yeah,
chasing that first flight, aren't we?
yeah, true.
And uh, I kind of asked this already, but have you had any in the last 20 years? Have you gone through periods where you find that it's hard to find that kind of stoke and excitement and passion?
Not really. I told you like only trouble time I had was like my injuries didn't deter me much, like with the broken shoulder or the sprained ankle or anything. But with my teammates' death and another teammates going into coma for 4 months, it was little difficult. I had a lot of thinking to do, and like really admit to myself why I compete or what should be my reasons to compete. But once I figured it out, it was okay.
And by figuring it out, was it just you felt like the risk was worth it? You felt like your love of it justified it?
I see our sport has risk in it all the time. That's one thing we all should admit before we do it. Thing is how much additional risk to take in competition, and that is what I evaluated, and also my motives for competing, and then in flight executing and or sticking to that principle that I came to that I will win when I like now my principle is simple. I will try to win when I can think smart and execute smart. But if I have to win by taking a chance, I don't care. I will let other people go if they want to do that.
That's smart. I think that that aligns with there are old pilots and bold pilots, but no old bold pilots.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm in the later category now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are you married? Do you have kids?
I have kids. I was married. We are separated now for many years. But I have a daughter. She's grown up, 23 now.
Ah. And did having children change your risk tolerance at all?
No, I started. My daughter was 3 years old when I started paragliding.
Hmm.
So I don't think like I was talking to Debu, and one of the reasons he has stopped competing is having kids now. And I was laughing with him that I started flying when I already had kids, and they grew up fine, no problems. So I can tell you.
If you could go back and now with all this experience of 20 years under your belt and all these competitions and seen some injuries and had some injuries, would you, if you could go back and give your 16-year-old self some advice? Did I get that right?
I was 29 when I
29,
started.
29. Sorry, so not your 16-year-old self, your 29-year-old self. If you could give that Gurpreet some advice, what would it be?
To immigrate and start flying somewhere else, and where I have mentors and coaches and better training.
Get out of India.
Yeah. When I was
Uh,
in UK doing my instructor certification, I was giving a theory lesson. I'm a physics postgraduate, so science came easy to me. Um, I was giving a lecture as a training instructor in a school, Airways Flight Park, and my chief instructor was listening to me give the lecture, and I was a little subconscious that maybe I'm doing something wrong. He's paying so much attention. But after the lecture, he came to me, he's like, I was just admiring the way you put things across. And he said, I should move out of India because India is holding me back. That's the first time I heard that. But I think there's an element of truth in that.
mm. So that's tough. You've got these, the biggest mountains in the world, an incredible playground to learn, but it doesn't. You don't have the maybe the infrastructure and the culture, I guess, that would support it.
Yeah, Gavin, but that's one way of thinking is that, okay, I suffered, but then way I think about it, the rewarding part of it is that maybe I also contributed in making it little better than it was.
Mm,
So if I stuck around, maybe it made a little dent because society is hard to change. I
sure.
don't think things are going to change in a big way just because I stuck to some standards. Um, but I think there is a certain level of skill transfer even to people who just fly around me, not just my students. And also, if I stick to some principles, then my competitor also has to stick to some principles. Otherwise, it's very obvious what they're doing. So it does translate to some gain. So I think I would like to think it was somehow useful.
What times in your career have really stood out as kind of special moments, and that like the times that you've really come away and gone, "Whoa, I really improved." Do you have specific times like that that really stand out?
I think 2009 and last 2 years also. I had a good glider also. The 2009 Axis Mercury was pretty good, and particularly one I had was pretty nicely trimmed, thanks to Martin at the factory.
Hmm.
But that was also a jump in confidence level. So and it was rewarding. That was one of the best. And now last 2 3 years also, somehow I'm enjoying every year now. Every year I see little improvement, little change, some small epiphany about flying, understanding little details, understanding a little bit about strategy, and I'm actually eager to convey to other Indian pilots. I hope they come up soon. I mean, and now we are getting like that 10, 12 people who are very good with cross country now already, and they should start competing soon. So I'm quite eager to be their mentor now.
Mm.
If they would accept me as one, then I would help them.
Yeah, maybe give them a little bit of what was hard for you to get.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be really special to share that kind of passion that you have and love of flight that you have. Um, Tell me about learning and progression. You are there you said you've kind of got this hole in your game with light thermals and wind. Are there
Yeah.
things that you're currently working on, or things that stand out as kind of holes in your ability, and how are you attacking that?
Actually, the biggest hole is now, I told you, weak windy conditions. And I don't have anywhere in India I can practice that. I'm exploring some sites, which is flatland sites in central India, Madhya Pradesh. And we plan to go there in February, me and Vijay, and fly there. And I also think that that will be a place for distance records in India. Indian distance record is maybe not good enough for world records. It's not windy enough, but still better than other places.
Have you flown at all in Brazil?
No, I haven't been to North or South America yet.
Ah, okay.
It's too too expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Oh well, we have to get you over here. I think you'd enjoy it. We have very strong conditions also where I live in the Rocky Mountains. You'd probably thrive here.
Yeah, I had registered for the U.S. Open this year, but then I backed out because just expenses were, for instance, didn't look very good, so I dropped that idea.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that was a fun competition. We had a couple of pretty major accidents there, of course. I'm sure you heard, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really fantastic competition. Um, so who are still who would you say are your mentors now? Is it still Debu? I know he's still around, but are there others?
Debu is not competing, so my mentor, it's like people Petra is one. Petra helps me. She's like a sister.
Hmm.
Um, Rest is more observation and reflection, actually. I don't think I have direct inputs coming from any pilot uh, as such, but more observing, analyzing, watching. Live tracking is big help. You
Yeah.
can see where you made mistake and other people are good. So having access to everybody's track and replaying the day, it helps a lot.
And do you utilize X contest to look at track logs of other pilots that are there, in non-competition times, but just like in general in beer to see what people are doing? Are there other tools other than live tracking you use to improve?
And see the XC contest or any online tracks of normal cross country, they're not so interesting. Like this year, if World Cup, the last task, people came in so trying to get that last waypoint, and they got a thermal of the tea factory, almost like rooftop height, and they finished the task from there. That's something I would have never imagined possible, having even lived here. I didn't know that you can come in so low over Beat Village, almost touching the tea factory roof, and get off from there and back to almost 2,500 meter and finish your task from there. That local knowledge thing didn't work there. It actually worked against me. I didn't think it was possible.
That brings up an interesting point. One of the things that Mad said in his podcast, and is something I've heard from other people, is that the local hero never wins the comp at his local site. That it's always somebody new that comes in and kind of sees things differently, or doesn't really know maybe the house thermals or whatever, but just flies maybe more creatively only because they're ignorant. They don't know the place. Do you find that you excel more at home, or when you're on the road?
On the road. I
Interesting.
totally agree with Mads on that.
Yeah.
It's we have too much preconceived notions about our own site,
Uh,
and when you look at the site with fresh perspective and just go by analysis of the place according to the condition, then it's much better. Of course, you have to be very good with that. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but with the top pilots, I think everybody will agree that this is usual. The place you're very used to, you will have some preconceived notions about it.
what kind of where do you like to be mentally when you go to a comp? Have you found that there's a correlation between when you do well and when you're in a certain frame of mind?
It's 100% right. It's all psychology. I mean, after a certain skill level, but it's hard to recreate. Like this year, summers, the first competition I did very well, and now the frame of mind I was in, I was almost seeing the whole competition happen as a third party, as a viewer from outside. And I knew exactly the mistake people were making, exactly where I should keep myself, when I should go fast. And it was amazing, and I've been trying to recreate that frame set in my mind, and I have not succeeded. Might have come close to it, but I don't know where it exactly came to. That's something I'm working on right now. Is that where did that frame of mind come from, and what do I need to do to be there again? So that's my homework.
That's interesting. Josh talked about a similar thing in the last podcast, which I was pretty fascinated about. You know, he actually started studying psychology to try to become better. And isn't that funny that we probably put too little weight on that. We all know it's a mental game, but it's really important.
Yeah, I think even with the very advanced teams, I don't know whether they're getting any psychological training or not, but with the associations that have budget, I think it should be important part. Psychology is the biggest part in competing. Also in cross country too, or excels.
Yeah, for
Anyway.
sure, for sure. You know, Nate has this saying: as soon as you think about landing, you're going to land.
Yeah,
um,
the ground pull.
yeah, ground suck, exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned something that was interesting to me. You said you studied science and physics, and you were quite adept at physics. I find that there's an extraordinary number of pilots worldwide that one day in the X Alps, I think the second day, I was walking down off the mountain with Aaron Duragati and Michael Vici and Stanislav Meyer, and Michael is an engineer and an incredibly solid PWC pilot for a long time, and really good pilot in general. And so we
Yeah.
started talking about his engineering background, and then I started reflecting on the. It seems to be there's a lot of engineers in this sport. I'm about the opposite of that. I'm more of a kinetic guy. I don't understand engineering at all. If someone went over a bridge that I built, they would kill themselves. So they what do you relate that to? And do you find that because your brain works in that way that it really helps your flying?
It's two parts to paragliding. One part is the science or the cerebral part, and other is the cortical thinking, the muscle memory and reflexes and feeling. And they're both equally important. And ideal would be to develop both equally, or actually build the science first and then the reflexes, or equally as you go. But I think both pilots do well. Like it's typically here also. Debu and me, we are quite on the opposite end. We might have worked our way towards the middle. Me developing more from the science, and he developing more because he started flying at 14 years old, and his formal education isn't much, so he didn't care much about learning science of it, and he developed and he's as good pilot and even maybe little better, I would say. But I think he probably had to learn some of the concepts the hard way, and I probably had to develop my senses to be finer and finer over the years. That took me longer because I started older. But I think both are equally important.
Mm, and they go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, they go hand in hand. You have to. It's like everything. You have to first understand things and then develop the feel, because we don't have the sensor that birds something. So feel is equally important to develop your reflexes and muscle memories and to do things instinctively at the moment. That's equally important. The same goes for like in one of the tasks this PwC here. It got really cloudy, and the waypoint was outside in the valley, and the next waypoint was outside. We were on the waypoint that was close to hill, And I think me and Ajay were pretty close at that time. And I decided that I need to go towards the waypoint because it's anyway outside, and if sun break, it will break from outside first. And Ajay somehow decided to go to the mountain and then go to the waypoint later on after saving himself on the mountain. And his strategy worked. And for me, the sun didn't break, and I bombed out. And I asked him like why he made the decision, and he had no why. And he said he kind of just meditated and let his instinct decide where he wants to go. He actually was totally confused also, and he just let his gut feeling take him there. He probably has better trained gut feeling than me then. So that's something I need to work on. Maybe.
Boy, how do you train your gut feeling though? That's a that's a
I
tricky
think
one.
more. No, it's. I think everybody has gut feeling, but when we are very cerebral thinker, like more scientific, we overrule it. We
Mm,
think too much, and we overrule it. If like me and Ajay, I think we have similar level of flying, and we should both have kind of experiences and reflexes. But because I was thinking too cerebrally, I overruled my instinct to do something.
mm. Yeah, I think there's almost some poetry there. I think that we've all probably had those moments where the gut feeling has really worked and it's terrific, and had the moments when we're too cerebral and you're on the ground watching everybody fly over your head.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I mean, cerebral helps, but not always. Sometimes it's also. But I've been thinking about it. Right now, it's just been from the last competition. I've been thinking, and I think when I'm from future, when I'm in doubt, my cerebral thinking is not very clear, and it's based on a chance that I go there, sun might break. Then I will shut up the cerebral and follow my gut because
Mm,
it's not clear answer. If it's clear answer, I will go there. If it's not clear answer, then I will just go by my instinct. Then.
mm. Yeah, I like that. Um, Gurpreet, that is, I don't think I could have said any of that lighter stuff better than myself. That was fantastic. I really appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anybody want to give a shout out to before we close things up? I feel like we got really lucky with this internet connection, and that was just a fabulous talk. I really appreciate your time.
Only I would like to thank all the people I fly with. Like I said recently on the Facebook also, I completed 20 years and I was celebrating that. And I wanted to say that flying is amazing, but the community is amazing also. They made it beautiful. So I'm thankful to all the people I fly with.
Yeah, it's a pretty special community, isn't it? It's really, I feel very fortunate to be a part of it. Well, it's well, here's to the next 20 years, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Gurpreet, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It was a pleasure.
I'm not the kind of guy, but I kill.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That talk really reminded me of one of Nate Scales's favorite sayings, which I have completely ripped off from him in a couple different film projects that I've done. But he said when we were working on 500 Miles to Nowhere, I love where paragliders take you, and I love where paragliders take you. And at first I couldn't understand the redundancy of that, but he described it as, because we love paragliding, we chase it all over the world. So, we follow our paragliders around the world to try to chase cross country, and then also that every time we step off a mountain, we have no idea where we're going to go. And so he loves where paragliders take you, and I've just always enjoyed that. I also really like where the cloud-based mayhem is taking me, and hopefully you, the listener, as we start to talk to people around the world. A lot of the guests we've had on the show have been pretty North American based, so it's good to reach out and get a perspective like Gurpreet's from the other side of the world. As always, please reach out to me if you have any feedback, or if you want to see somebody on the show. Let me know via my website, cloudbasedmayhem.com, or via Facebook. You can find me on there, or Instagram, or whatever you like to use. Really appreciate your generous donations. As always, all we ask for is $1 a show. If you got something out of this or one of the previous shows, like Nate Scales's, which was definitely one of our most popular. He's back a few episodes. If you haven't checked that one out, you have to. It's hysterical. His account of his XOP experience in 2007 and then flying around taking pictures of waypoints back before we had GPS is really, it'll make you laugh, I promise. But keep doing this. I enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Give us a shout out on iTunes or Stitcher if you like us. Give us a rating on there, and we'll catch up with you the next time. Cheers.